Good evening, everyone. How many here are people from Bartlesville and the area? Most everyone. All right. Now, how many been living here all these years and going, Delaware tribe? What's that? How many people have never heard of the Delaware tribe before? Anybody? A few people? You're from out of town, though. I see. All right. My name is Zunigha. I am a enrolled member of the federally recognized Delaware Tribe of Indians. Currently, I serve as the director of our cultural department. And, I gotta turn my timer on. She'll give me the hook at the end. It says 20 minutes, and at 19 minutes and 55 seconds, she's like that. So I was kind of wondering what I was going to do and how big of a crowd we have and the venue and all. So please allow me to share just a few moments and just tell about who we are. The Delaware Tribe of Indians. In our language, we are called Lenape. Lenape meaning the original people. Now, like many tribes, like the Cherokee, most of the tribes here in Oklahoma, their original homeland was somewhere far off. In the case of the Delaware, our original homeland extended from the foothills of the Catskills Mountains in New York, and then coming south, it picks up the New York City area, all of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia, and all the way down into what's now the northern part of the state of Delaware. That was our original homeland. Historically, we are the people who encountered some of the first European explorers and colonizers who came to this land. But before that, we had a 10,000-year history in the homeland, in Lenape, our original homeland. And we had a rich and vibrant culture. We were known in the language of many tribes, even to this day, as the grandfathers. One of the oldest known native indigenous people here in what's now America, the Lenape. And when the Europeans came, some famous stories in our encounters with European explorers and later colonizers. Our first encounters were primarily with the Dutch, from all the way coming down into what's now New York Harbor and up and down the Hudson River. We called it Mahiaconatuck, the river that flows both ways. You had water coming down from the mountains, but it was also a tidal basin river. So you had all the waters from the tides coming in from the ocean and pushing their way up through several natural channels into the freshwater Mahiaconatuck, or now known as the Hudson River. And one famous myth, and I want to emphasize a myth in history, you've probably heard of this, and that was called the Purchase of Manhattan, where the Dutch bought the entire island of Manhattan for a few trinkets, baubles and beads and axe heads and the like. I'm going to tell you right now, that is a myth. The Lenape did not understand the ownership of land and to sell it, conveyance with a title or a deed. They did not understand that. The land is sacred. The land had a spirit, just like the humans and all other animals. The rivers, the female spirit. The sky, the mountains, the ancient ones. Muhomsak, the mountains. They have an ancient knowledge. How can you own these things that are so much greater and more powerful than you are as a people? Our way of life was one of living in harmony and balance with all of those spirits, and having ceremonial and annual practices where we honored the gift of our identity, the gift of the land, the waters, the cosmos, and our knowledge of that relationship. And when we lived in harmony and balance in the ways that the Creator taught us, and we practiced the ceremonies that we learned to participate in, to consecrate our life, that is what made us a mighty people. Everything changed when the European colonizers arrived. Everything changed. And what you see or hear in history, the history books, some of the movies, it kind of told this story of manifest destiny, right? The Europeans come here, and God ordained this land for the Europeans. And the natives were nothing but ignorant savages that needed to be converted or killed. Yeah, some of this is not in your history books, but I'm here to tell you that is our history. I'll tell you a little more, but that's why we're here and we're not back in our homeland. Another incident in history, we encountered the British after the Dutch, and the British turned New Amsterdam into New York. Their encounters with the Lenape were to further a growing fur trade. And so they built a fort in what used to be New Amsterdam to the Dutch, but now New York to the British. And they built a village community. And to keep those Delaware or Lenape Indians out, they built palisades and a wooden wall all the way around their New York village. So here's a little interesting point in history. They built that wall to keep the Indians out because they claimed, we bought this land, you have to go, this is ours now. Inside that wall, right along the perimeter of the wall, was a road, a footpath, that grew in size to accommodate wagons, horses, cattle. And that road that went along the perimeter of the wall, all around New York, became a street. Guess what? It was called Wall Street. So New York Wall Street, known as the center of world commerce, that was the center of commerce and trade for the Lenape and so many other Algonquin-speaking and Iroquoian-speaking indigenous people 1,000 years before the Europeans came. And how ironic that today's Wall Street is actually the name of the street along the wall that kept the Lenape out of their homeland. Another incident in history occurred September 17, 1778. In the midst of the Revolutionary War, George Washington coveted a relationship with the Delaware, now known as the Delaware. They became known as the Delaware because the English colonial governor over that area was Sir Thomas West, and one of his titles of nobility was he was the third Lord de la Warre, W-A-R-R-E, and de la Warre morphed into Delaware, and that's what the British began to call the River Valley and the native inhabitants. So we became known in history, written history, as the Delaware. And George Washington coveted a relationship with the Delaware because we knew all of the lands between New York City and Philadelphia, which was the hotbed of the growth of the 13 colonies that became the United States. Washington negotiated a treaty with the Delawares, at first seeking neutrality in the war, but ultimately the Delawares sided with the United States and helped win the Revolutionary War. There was a promise in that treaty, the first Indian treaty that the United States entered into with their newly established powers of the U.S. Constitution. The first Indian treaty they ever made was with the Delaware, and they actually promised equal representation in the Congress. A 14th state, all Indian state, and they promised the Delawares would be the head of that state. But like all things, we were promised much. They took our land and broke all of the promises. We were cast out of our homeland and pushed off in many different directions. Over a period of time, the main band of the Delaware continued to go through Ohio. Other smaller bands split off. They went up through New York, up into Canada. They came around through northern Ohio and Fort Detroit and crossed over into southern Ontario. All of this movement, and today there are 2 Delaware reserves in southern Ontario. There's a band of Muncies in Wisconsin, and there are 2 bands of Delaware here in the state of Oklahoma. Collectively, we are the descendants of the original Lenape people. I liken it to being different branches of the same tree trunk. That's the legacy that we were left. The mighty and noble Lenape, the grandfathers, split up into groups and cast out of their original homeland. But we persevered because we kept our customs, our traditions, our language, even in the worst of times. We had to adapt and assimilate in many ways in order to survive. Now, then we had a reservation in Kansas up through the Civil War. And at that time, after the Civil War, and we actually had warriors fighting for the Union Army back during the Civil War. When the Civil War was over, our reservation, which was kind of up by Lawrence and Leavenworth in Kansas, we were forced to leave that reservation and come down here into what was the Indian Territory. And in an agreement that was brokered with the Cherokee Nation, of which Dora is a member, the Delaware Indians moved down into the Cherokee Nation Indian Territory, where today we are a Indian tribe that resides within an Indian nation. Now, a couple of little historical tidbits for you. You Bartians that may not know this, but Jacob Bartles set up a trading post, and he was trading with the Delawares who had their village established here. When we came down from Kansas, we crossed the state line, and we had negotiated with the Cherokees to establish a village, a community, right here by the Caney River. Now, I also like to say they moved the Delawares up here in the far northwest corner of the Cherokee Nation and put the Delawares right there, principally in what's now Washington County, because they wanted to put the Delawares there as a buffer between the civilized Cherokee Nation and those wild Osages. So, we've been established here since 1868 when we came down from Kansas. Jacob Bartles married a full-blood Delaware Indian woman, Nanny Journeycake Pratt. They ultimately established the city of Bartlesville. And at one point, after all of the flooding of the Caney River for years and years and years, they picked up everything and moved a little further north to get to a higher elevation and founded the city of Dewey, Oklahoma in about, I don't know, 1895, 96, something like that. There's another story about the history of the Delawares that's very compelling. Frank Phillips and Phillips Petroleum Company, well known for this great oil company that still stands today. Frank Phillips, when he was wildcatting, was poking holes in the ground all over the place here, trying to hit pay dirt like others did back in those wildcatter days. And he was just about out of money and just about out of, gonna call it quits, when he hit a gusher on the Indian allotment of Anna Davis, the Anna Davis well. And that's the one that really got him going and started the empire of Phillips Petroleum Company. That little girl, Anna Davis, her granddaughter is my co-worker at work every day. So we have some very compelling stories about the history of Bartlesville and how the beginnings of Bartlesville very much included the Delaware Indians. Today, we are a modern, vibrant community of people. We live amongst the Cherokee and the Osage here in this crossroads of cultures here. And our tribal headquarters is over on the east side of town on Tuxedo Boulevard. Make mental note of this, Delaware Tribe, Delaware Tribe.org. Delaware Tribe, all one word, .org. Look at our website. We've got a lot of great historical information about our modern community and our tribal government, social services. There's also a tab for culture and language, that's my department, where we make efforts to learn our language and pass it along to our children. So I just wanted to share a little bit of information. There's so much more, but I have so little time. Later on, after I'm finished, we'll move this table over. If you want to come up and take a look at a few goods I brought, feather fans and our type of moccasins we make and wear. There's a couple of musical instruments I brought. So let's see here. I'm going to go with the drum first. And because, all right, watch this. I'm going to turn this on. Can you all hear me? No, that's all right. If everybody can hear me, I'll do without the microphone because I need to hold this drum. This is a water drum. It's an iron kettle. It boils water really good in your camp, but guess what? We figured out a way of making a drum out of it by stretching a wet hide over the top. It's got water inside. I just got done tying this about an hour ago. There's water in here, so it kind of creates a kind of a deep tympanic sound. Rhythm for a lot of our social dance songs. So we still like to get together. We have an annual powwow up at Copan at the end of May. Maybe some of you have been up there. We didn't have it last year because of the pandemic, but we came back and had it this past May. It was a success, and it was very touching spiritually to get back into our camps, be amongst our families and friends. This drum, when we hear that, and we feel a connection with the drum beat and the sound, for a lot of our people that are going, why do I have this emotional response when I hear that drum, when I hear that singing? That's because this is the heartbeat of those ancestors. That's how we connect with them, with these songs, when we talk in our language. That's why we have survived. We recognize and honor the gift of sacrifice that our ancestors made to stay alive and to come out here and find a place to keep living. find a way to hold on to our language and our customs and traditions and pass them on to another generation. Rattles. I know y'all know about rattles as musical instruments. You were probably laying in the little crib there, shaking that little plastic rattle and making noise. We had rattles out of turtle shells, gourds, right out of the garden. This one here for gourd dancing, it's out of a salt shaker. All right, I see those kids getting kind of nervous. Why don't y'all come over here and join me in a dance? Don't be bashful. I need somebody else. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to do about one song. Big kids too. This is going to be Malak Sitkan, the bean dance. The story of the three sisters tells us about corn, beans, and squash grown together, called the Three Sisters. So we have one song in our ceremonies that honor the bean vine. So I need you here. We're going to go boy, girl, boy, girl. Don't be bashful, but you have to hold my hand. Now come over here and reach out with your right hand. Now you come over. Take his hand. Don't be bashful. Now some of you other kids, if you want to get in line, you can. What we do is we're going to dance and we're going to emulate the growth of the bean vine as it chases the sun, grows up. That bean vine would wrap around the corn stalk so it could get up there and get that sun and hold on to something so that it could grow. Yo, Gine, yo, Gine, ayo, yone, ayo, yone, awe, ayo, yone, ayo, yone, we ya, ayo, yone, ayo, yone, awe, ayo, yone, ayo, yone, we, oh, oh. Now, can you imagine being out on the dance ground around a fire at night and about 80 or 90 people following me as we emulate the bean vine growing around the dance ground? That's our Saturday Night Live. That's our fun. Saturday Night Fever, right? That's how we have fun, and we've been doing it for about 200 years. Thank you. All right. I'm probably going over. I'm going to end it up with one more song. I'll just use a hand drum. This is the Lenape honoring song, and I sing it to honor the ancestors, honor my tribe, and I appreciate the privilege of standing before you and making this little presentation on this warm summer evening, and thank you for coming out.